You're unmuted.
I'm unmuted.
Yep.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. You can see my screen, right? Correct?
You have the a nice new thing up.
Yes. All right. We'll give it like 2 minutes and start. Up to you.
Yeah. You want to let them know?
Uh, Everybody can hear us.
Hello, everyone.
So I can still see people are joining. So more.
Wonderful.
while everybody's waiting here, I have some homework for you to do. First thing you should do, pull up your LinkedIn or just click on this link, follow Leslie. Second thing you should do while you're waiting as well is the Village Collective as well. This is one of the places where you'll be able to stay up to date on any future webinars, as well as the discussions that happen, the lively discussions that happen via LinkedIn during the week. Alrighty. And so with that being said, we'll get started here. Again, thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar today. Webinar number 6. Does belonging equal inclusion? I'll skip my introduction because I'm not that important. We want to make sure that
please do your introduction.
Yeah. Well, Michael Lewis. I am the founder of the Village Collective, which is a community of first-generation immigrant, diverse startup and entrepreneurs here in the New York City tri-state area. I also have another company by the name of My Bag Check, on-demand bag luggage pickup and secure storage and delivery platform. Basically, we monetize the unused trunk space of Uber and Lyft vehicles that are already on the road. And without further ado, I will introduce you, if you don't know, Leslie Short, who's going to be heading up our discussion today.
Thank you. Do you want to take the photo down?
Doing it now.
Just so I can see everyone. Wonderful. So I'm Leslie Short. If any of you don't know me, I know there were some new people that were going to join. So just quickly, I'm the owner of the Cavo Group that focuses on diversity and inclusion, company culture, anything bias, community, workplace, that type of thing. And these topics, these discussions have been really important to me. If you like, I would love for you to turn your cameras on because I like to actually speak to people and not initials and puppies. And this is not the typical webinar where I'm only going to speak. You feel free to join in the chat. Misha will open it up. This is not wait to the end. This is a conversation. So thank you everyone for joining, you and folks that have joined me before. And I have someone that says they forgot to register, and I don't know if I can send her the information right now, but it's Kim.
Okay.
If you can get it to her. All right. So this conversation really started because I noticed the word belonging kept popping up in advertisements and jobs and conversation. So I said, let's pay attention to what's happening because something doesn't feel right about it to me. And the more I start seeing it, I started researching. And this is, I like to start hot. So here's some of the things that I found. I did a Google search and kind of on how do people belong and what type of jobs are out there. And this is what I found. Diversity and belonging, HR and belonging, student development and belonging, corporate responsibility and diversity and belonging, diversity, inclusion and belonging, cultural-based programming and belonging, and you needed 7 to 10 years in order to qualify for any of those positions. So yeah, which makes zero sense. But so a belonging to me, and if you saw the invite, you saw it's a very different meaning than inclusion. And before I get into my thought process on that, there was, and I don't think Patty's on, and Patty, if you're on, I told you I was going to read this, so I'm going to. She sent me an email the other day and she said, oh my God, this is what I see and feel when about belonging and inclusion. She said, diversity is being invited to the party. Equity is having the means to go to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Belonging is having your dance moves celebrated. Please feel free to start writing in. Not what I said. I said, that's great. I like that, but something's missing. even if I'm invited to the dance and can get to the dance and told come to the floor and dance, if I don't know how to dance and no one shows me how to dance, then I'm just still in the middle of the floor. So I say all of that to start saying my definition of belong is I belong to a club. I belong wherever I want to belong, but I belong to a club, right? Inclusion is not belonging to that club, but feeling that I have a voice or place within that club. That's my thought. Start typing in, start talking, whatever you want to bring into this, because I also feel, and this could be my bias, I'll say it, that belonging is a nice, soft, friendly way to disregard and remove diversity and inclusion. Because I think people are so exhausted of speaking about diversity and inclusion and trying to figure it out that belonging sounds warm and fuzzy. And diversity and inclusion, not so warm and fuzzy. So Google has decided to dismantle their diversity and inclusion department. And people are being assigned all over the place and they're going to belong somewhere else. So yeah, that doesn't sit well with me. And not only because I do diversity and inclusion, because what doesn't sit well with me is the fact that I feel like it's being kind of whitewashed again. To how do we make everybody feel warm and fuzzy, but you still can't make somebody belong to something if you haven't made a space for them to feel open and inclusive within that space. So I see questions coming in, so I'm going to stop.
And here's what I'll add as well too, is that if you have a question or comment, please feel free to unmute your mic and engage within the conversation. I do ask, there is a caveat to that. I do ask, if you have a noisy background, just type your question. We'll see it. But if you don't, then feel free to just open up, unmute yourself and ask the question. I see there is the first comment or question, looks like from Nance, in regards to membership versus participation. So please unmute your mic, Nance, and please further expound upon that.
Yeah, so I am seeing these cases now. I work in diversity, inclusion, and compliance, and I'm seeing more cases where one of the excuses for someone being terminated, for example, is they're not a good culture fit. So when you say belonging, right, I think it opens that door now for this pretext that could be discrimination, right? But we can say, oh, not a good culture fit, and then maybe try to, play the numbers game of maybe this person will just go away. And instead of really looking at if someone's not succeeding in a position, have we done everything we can to include them and give them the tools they need to make sure that they can succeed? Because it's not just on the employee or the member of whatever group we're talking about to become part of the group, right? I think that's where the membership measures participation, because I'm a member in this group. And right now I'm participating, but it would be very easy for me to just keep my camera off, keep my mic off, and just watch what's going on. So I think it's about, what you've done, Leslie and Micah. You've said, get in here with us. And that is a perfect example of what we should be doing all around.
Thank you, Nance, for that, as always. Yeah, it's just the word belonging for me went to a nice one word to starting to piss me off a little bit. Just because I'm very concerned. And if there's anyone here that does HR and that feels that they can speak freely without saying their company, I would love to hear when leadership came to you and said, hey, we want to do belonging now. What else came with that? Or you just hit them with the, okay, now we're doing belonging, click, 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 move inclusive, put belonging. And now we have the same ad that we had out 6 months ago with the new title that you still didn't hire anybody because they don't have the 7 to 10 years experience, which still makes no sense to me, but that's a different conversation. So how does anyone else feel about belonging? Ernie, I know we were speaking about this earlier. Earlier today, Ernie hosted an amazing TEDx Circles, and part of that was about belonging as well. So what's your thoughts?
Thank you for that, Leslie, and thanks for joining earlier today. I think to go back to what we talked about earlier was the tenets of those things were trust and security and a bit of the empowerment was the word we used earlier. But the membership comes from that. That's the membership has its privileges, and so if I felt like I was part of the group, so the membership needs to be able to I need to pass the test, right? You get in because you had 7 to 10 years or whatever ridiculous thing they're asking for. But more importantly, I can contribute something of value to the organization. And so if I feel like I belong, then I'm bringing that to the organization and being additive and contributing that. So if I don't feel like I can do that, or if I'm not respected, or I'm not given the trust that that the organization owes me as a member of this organization, then it's not the same thing. I don't feel included. I don't belong to that. And those things are just hollow.
So I'm going to jump in one thing there because that triggered. And if someone else, feel free. Does belonging mean that's on me to make myself feel like I'm belonging, or is that on the company to make me feel like I belong? Thoughts?
I would say, oh, sorry.
No, just sorry. I said quickly. I'd say I think it's whoever speaks, right? So if it's the voice of the organization, they can dictate who belongs part of their club. But if I'm a member of the club, I get to dictate of who my tribe is.
Okay.
I'll add to that. And Leslie, I work in HR, and I work in this happy place of being a consultant. So I support a bunch of nonprofits. So while I don't necessarily work for any of the organizations, I can speak a little bit more freely because I work in the consultative space. What I would say is the challenge there is creating an environment that will allow people to feel belong, and feel the belongingness. And that's the tricky part. So it's like when someone comes to me and they ask me to, introduce belonging or introduce diversity, I challenge them to describe what their culture currently is, and then tie that into the characteristics that they're actually looking for in a role or a person to bring into that place, and see if those two lists line up, and see how inclusive those lists actually are, and they typically aren't. And I like that approach, and I like the fact that I can do that in the role that I'm in, but I know some people who may work internally don't necessarily have that leverage sometimes.
Oh, that's great, thank you. And I'm happy there's someone out there like you, and I'm sure others, but that take the time to put the two lists side by side and challenge. I know as a consultant, when I go in, I do the same thing. I get to challenge because I can. That is the advantage of being consultants, that you can say, what does that mean to you? And, you throw somebody off when you put the onus back on them to explain what they just asked you to do. Instead, I was like, I don't want to assume I know what belonging means to you, or what diversity means to your company, or what inclusion means to your company. So tell me what you're looking for. And then I love the companies that say, well, I need to do this. So if you need to do this, that's another checkbox. But how do you plan on implementing this that is sustainable within your company culture? Because if belonging or inclusion or whatever you want to call it at the moment, and you're bringing people in and they don't feel anything, they don't feel it in themselves, they don't feel it in what is being shown to them, it still doesn't matter. So I'm just so curious about why. I typed in literally just jobs belonging, and the list just went flying. And I was like, so this really is the new trend. I don't know if I'm jumping on this trend. It hasn't been proven to me yet. And I don't know what that proven is, why I wanted to have this conversation, to just see how are others feeling, and is it another rabbit hole that we're going down? Just so, I don't know, just so companies can say, well, I tried something, it didn't work. I tried to make everybody belong. I told them they all belong. Sorry, go ahead, love.
Hey, hi Leslie. It's good to see you. I saw you at Blueprint a long time ago. So
I remember your face. Good to see you. Thank you for joining.
my quarantine face. So I currently am in just some context. I'm actually in the education field.
Mhm.
And I worked as a consultant with states and districts and schools who want to bring diversity into into their schools. And one of the biggest thing was like, we need a day, an 8-hour PD on how do we do this, right? And so right now I'm transitioning into more of the business world, and I want to bring some of those aspects of training into their background. But a little bit in terms of my comment is, I think that every single person has some sort of bias, right? And I say that coming as a biracial female, an able-bodied female, a straight female, right? And so, but everyone has their bias. And so I think that it's a way that it's a survival technique, right? You acknowledge what's around you, what feels safe, what doesn't feel safe. And so the key I felt when I was working with schools was to be aware of it and not necessarily criticize it, as long as you can be aware and address it. So when I think about inclusion, it's not just it's race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, disabilities,
Studies.
all of that. Yeah, all of that. And I think that when I went into schools, the first thing I would do is look around the building. So, like, what type of artwork do they have up? What types of quotes do they have up? Are they only having quotes from white men? What does it visually look like? So that's the first thing, because that does impact the environment. If you change that, it's a superficial change, right? That's not the only change, but it's important to have the group of people that you're trying to attract or have as part of your team to be represented in your physical space. Now, then the second thing is, to build off of that, is to address your bias. So sometimes people think that because you're a certain race, you can perform a certain way, or a certain gender, right? And so I think that's the second thing of, like, addressing bias, particularly around how you perceive someone's competence. And so I think that this whole conversation, I can go on, but when I work with schools, there's literally a long checklist of your physical space, your team dynamics, your culture, what are your team's values, et cetera. And I mean, when I say it's a long list, it's a long list that I look through and working with people.
I agree with you. When I consult for companies, I come in and I look at everything, and I look at the physical first, because I don't know anyone yet. So I want to know how you've made me feel when I walk through the door.
Right.
When no one knows why I'm there. And so a lot of times I show up before it's announced to the team that I'm going to be working with them. Now, sometimes it's a little obvious why the little black girl sitting in the middle of the office. Okay. She's like, she's working on a project. She's with someone, so sometimes it's a little bit more obvious than others. Other times I'm sliding in and I'm taking a desk, and I just kind of try to keep my head low, which I know any one of you know me going, yeah, that's not possible. But I kind of weave in and out, and either ask questions or just really see how they respond. And then how it changes once they know I'm there. But how does it look? How does it feel? How does it smell? What's on the walls? What's all of those things matter on how you belong. And it doesn't, yes, if you're looking to be inclusive, then are you adding in your programming to be inclusive and belonging? And that's, again, across the board. It's not about race or gender. Anyone has ever heard me speak, I say that all the time. It's bigger than race and gender. It is the disabilities. It is, LGBTQ plus. It is who we are and what each of us brings to the table. Now, granted, you can't satisfy everybody, so we already know that. But is it an understanding that you're dealing with people and not numbers? Because I now want to know, because if data is so big for certain companies, and I'm not knocking data is great as long as you know how to use the data after you have the data, and not just hold on to data, then I think there's a purpose. So how are you going to quantify belonging? I don't think anyone's thought about that, but somebody at the end of the year is going to sit down and talk about their bonus, and they're going to say, well, how's everyone belonging? And they're going to be like, what you say now? Oh, I was supposed to quantify that? We had pizza on Friday, so I think we really need to dig in just what that means. It's like when they say wellness. Does that mean you have a yoga class, or does that mean that there's someone there that is speaking about mental illness and other issues on wellness, on health and being? They went through a wellness stage. So now we went through the diversity, or someone sent me an email today saying, listen, do you know someone that writes up a program for affirmative action? I was like, affirmative action? I haven't heard that used in a minute. You mean, I was like, I'm gonna need a little bit more context on what that means. So we go through these phases: diversity, affirmative action, and diversity. Got to make sure people are inclusive. So diversity and include. Now we're at belonging. Any other thoughts on that? Well, I know this is not a quiet group. Don't make me call you out. I'm like the school teacher. I will call you out. Brian. And don't know me, because you're really getting called out.
Well, I mean, I don't really work in a corporate space, and belonging is not. I mean, the work I do a lot of nonprofit work, but it's what I've really been focused on lately is more taking all of this concept, and then how do you expand it to your supply chains, to the people that are working for you, to your customers, because I think that's it's very easy to say, oh yes, we're doing this work to get more people of color, to get more LGBT people into the office, when you have to see those people every single day, and to have inclusion programs. But when you have to think about, like, oh, okay, is this woman who's sewing my garments in Bangladesh getting the same amount of money that the men they're getting? And I think that for me is that's been more my focus on things, and where we at with that. And so the belonging thing is kind of new to me, and I'm not really sure how it fits into all that.
Well, that's the thing. It is, I want to say, fairly new, or what I thought was fairly new. I pay attention to, the trends. I'm reading everything, but it was in the last probably 3 or 4 weeks that I've seen it I feel just all of a sudden just changing conversation and changing a push, and Google takes it away, and everyone's going to be people and belonging managers. And I'm like, what? I need to apply for a job now, because I need to know the rules. I need to know what my job is every day.
I mean, it feels to me, honestly, like marketing jargon. To me, it just doesn't have not so much that the people are trying to simplify it, but I think, to your point, just to make it more kumbaya, in the workplace, rather than actually doing the work that needs to get done.
Number one, you need to walk in with your own sense of belonging. That's number one. We spoke about this earlier today. No job is ever going to give you a sense of belonging. If that's where you belong at your job, we need to reevaluate some other things. It's just my thought process, because I would hate for anyone to just be looking to belong to a job. And I know some people do, but we all need more than that in life in order to be a full being and to continue to grow. So walk in your own belonging and your own being. And then you have to decide if that space is also right for you. I've been at spaces where I was welcomed and I was included. I mean, it was crazy for everyone. Like it was an equal opportunist, crazy, situation. But the thing is, I knew that place, though many people wanted that job and position, was not the place for me. I did not belong there. I was misplaced. I learned a great deal. It's one of the few corporate jobs I had where I wasn't in charge. And it wasn't the fact that I wasn't in charge, because I was in charge of what I was creating and producing. The entire surroundings wasn't for me. So I knew I didn't belong and moved myself. Yes.
I got a question for you. how do we walk in? You made a comment about, having a feeling of belonging when you walk into a job, but what tips are, how do we actually do that to walk into a job like that? And give that a little bit more context, especially, AD after the disease, BC before COVID, like you walk in, you need a job, you need a paycheck. You know that you can do the job, but how do I walk into a place like with that confidence to know that I belong here without having to, I guess, I mean, I can't really describe it, but it's like the feeling that, okay, I know I belong here because of my credentials, my experience, and everything else. But how do I force that sense of belonging on the environment that I'm in?
I don't force the sense of belonging. I walk in knowing my space, knowing what I can do, and having the confidence within myself. And I allow my work to speak for itself. So my work may belong, but I still may not belong. So you have to understand that sometimes you have to separate some things. We want everything to be in a nice package. I want to belong. I want to go on the golf trip. I want to get promoted. I want to do the presentation. Like, come on now. There are differences. So when I walk in, I belong because I've decided I belong. I've already proved that I can get hired, but now I belong here. Now I prove it through my work. If my spirit, if my spirit doesn't feel that it's right, or that I'm not getting back what in a decent human being sense from someone, if I can't go around and navigate that, then I have to sit back and go, is this the right space for me to grow in the being that I want to be, to belong the way that I need to feel that I belong? So we can't also, and yes, look, coming out of on the other side of this, if you are blessed enough to still have a job or to get a job or to create a job for yourself, there's going to be sacrifices that need to be made. But you don't sell your soul to the devil. At least that's the way I look at it. You still have to be able to say, either one, this is for a time and a moment that I need to get through this, and this is not where I'm going to stay. I belong here now, but this is not the end all for where I'm going.
It looks like we have a question here in the chat from Dr. Al. Give me just a moment. Let me see if
Sarah, why is your camera not on? I'm calling you out if I know you. Tiffany. Sorry.
I was gonna jump in there just so I don't get scolded, Leslie. So when you guys
my computer's not working.
Turn the camera on. Where was the question from?
Sorry, I had to mute a bunch of people. Like once I started unmuting, a lot of background noise in the background. So sorry. Sorry what you're saying. Apologize.
No, I was trying. There was someone that had a question.
Yeah, it's a question in the comments because it looks like when I went to go unmute them, there's a lot of background noise. Couldn't hear it. So it says, I'll read it out. It says, I'm Dr. Al, signed in as their username. I currently work in an educational setting as a counselor, previously working in corporate, private, and public, as well as with the local city, state, and federal level. I found that I can feel empowered within myself, but others may make you feel that you don't belong intentionally or unknowingly. So I guess that was a comment, sorry.
Yes, no, but that's a great comment. There will be people, as we know, that will try to explain to you about you, whether they use it through their work. And, when someone says this is not good enough, the question that I say to people is to ask them, then what part of this is not good enough? It's not a personal thing. Where do you take fault in this paper? But we sometimes make things too personal because of everyone needs to be belong, because everyone has to belong. So that means we all have to be friends. If you get to go to work and you meet good people and you become friends with them, that is a bonus. That is not a guarantee. There's nowhere when they hire you that says you're going to be friends with everybody, or that everyone's going to like you, or that you're going to get treated the same way. At that point, though, if you're trying to make everybody feel kumbaya, there's always going to be people that don't feel that way. There are always going to be people that's going to go, they didn't like me because I had brown hair. They didn't like me because I was black. Somebody made a gay comment. Someone made a straight comment. Someone made this. And so you can call it whatever you want. If you don't have the decency of company culture of, and I'm going to use this word loosely and then I'll come back to it, respect for the other human being, you're going to have a problem. Because see, people don't always respect each other for the simple fact of you're my boss. And that's next week's, kind of topic on leadership, and how can people just speak to anybody any old way because that's where you are? Does belonging mean that I need to make sure that everyone feels warm and fuzzy every day when I come in? How was your day? How was your night? How are the family? And so, yes, that's pleasantries and that's great. But when it's time to get to work, let's be honest, it's time to get to work. So if you didn't ask me how I was feeling that day, but you asked Ernie and Nancy and Kim and Michael and Brian, I may start feeling some kind of way. Knowing me, I'm going to be like, yo, I'm good. Anyway, let's go. And sometimes you may have to address it in a way that people recognize that they have dismissed you. Just like us New Yorkers, when somebody opens the door, when you open the door for someone and they don't say thank you, what does everybody turn around and go, oh, you're welcome? That may be the same way you have to be in the office of, no, I'm good today. Thanks for asking, though. Let's get with that belonging. I don't know. It's a new frontier on how we associate with everyone, how we come back on the other side of this with belonging. I call it empathy. And to understand that we're going to need a different type of empathy coming back into the office.
Sorry about that. I understand that I cut off Alex, so I'll give Alex the floor. Yeah.
All right. Well, what I was saying is I wanted to jump in before I got scolded by Leslie when she was looking for somebody to make some commentary. Leslie, what I was thinking that, that belonging AI search that you did and the string of belongings that you encountered most probably is kind of that search algorithm driven thing because, I'm going to have two conversations here in parallel. The diversity and inclusion conversation surpassed by this belonging thing that you've come across. It's hard to have diversity and inclusion when you don't have groups. And since we're not going to the office, there's no groups. So if that's getting displaced with what I think is people searching for feelings, thoughts, ideas, experiences of belonging. And that belonging word is probably driving everything to the top. And so I think a lot of this is before you even get to the office and try to figure out what that belonging definition is, whether that's within yourself or incumbent on a corporation, is, how comfortable are you belonging with yourself? And since we're doing a lot of that these days, we're home. A lot of us are home by ourselves or with limited people around us. We're really having to figure out how to belong with ourselves in a way that we probably didn't have to do before, right? So I think, there's always going to be those groups that are looking for groups to belong with because, they're not comfortable being by themselves or they're not taking the time to figure out how to be comfortable with themselves. And they may place more importance on the organization, whether that's work or church or whatever, to figure out the needs of that belonging, right? That it's the church is going to take care of it, or the company's going to take care of it, or the organization is going to take care of that sense of feeling of belonging. And then there's some that don't need that. They come in feeling good about themselves and they figure it out. For me, I see that as I get older, the need to belong in a company setting is less important to me than the work at hand. When I was younger, it was all about the Wednesday night beers with the team or the social interaction or, gee, I hope they like me, and I hope they like me as well as I hope they like my work. And now it's just like, I got a job to do. I'm getting in there. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be friendly. It doesn't mean that I'm not sensitive to be belonging, but my focus is more about the work and less about the need for that support to belong.
So let me jump in really quickly for a couple things, if you don't mind, and thank you for that. One, I'm going to have to throw back on you on diversity. And Kim, get ready, because I'm going to throw to you about the article you sent to me. One, diversity has nothing to do with whether we're working at home or working in the office. We are all diverse, number one. Inclusion, it comes back to, now that we are working from home, yes, there is a lack of that community or belonging, as you want to say, within. That's also up to leadership and yourself to make sure that you're not the forgotten one.
Totally agree. I was only saying that you were stunned by the belonging kind of rising to the top.
Kim, I'm not cutting you off, but I'm gonna throw it to Kim, because as soon as this happened, Kim and many other people start sending me articles. Go, Kim, Forbes magazine.
Oh, now you know I can't remember what it said. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so I'll do the comment about what you said about confidence. I think one of the things that we have to walk in there with always is confidence in ourselves. And leaning back on what Alex said about a wholeness, I'm with you, Alex. And Leslie had called me on this point before about I would walk in the office and not say good morning. I was just so focused on my work. Now that she called me on, now that was my fault and made probably other people feel they didn't have a sense of belonging in my world, because I do insurance. It's a lot of talk, but that was something that somebody had to she pulled my coattail on, that I actually was really being rude and really being unhappy with what I was doing. I didn't feel like I belonged there. So then that was coming off as very nasty to other people. The article in Forbes talked about belonging, and it talked about it's different a sect than it is with inclusion and diversity. They actually put it to the side as something different. One of the other things that I read today is that what they were saying about belonging, is this now something, going off a little bit, is this something now that they're just coloring another color because it's easier to sell it as belonging to the CEOs and to upper management than it is to diversity and inclusion?
And so yes, Alex, people want to belong, and so yes, it's coming on top of the AI search, absolutely. But at the end of the day, there is a swell, there's a reason for it, because the companies are now dismantling departments and putting in people in belonging. So it's going hand in hand, and that's what made me kind of peak up a few weeks back by seeing this, not only in articles, but starting to see the jobs listing that way for me to go ahead and do that search. So, and articles are being written about it now. I don't know what time it is, but I want to throw in just quickly that on these webinars, as you can see, they're a little bit different because I love everyone to speak. And if there's something or someone that you would like to connect with, start throwing in your LinkedIn link so that people can start connecting. There's some amazing people, the ones that I can see. Now, all of you that have joined us, and everyone has really been connecting in a wonderful way. And that's what this is about. This isn't about me just speaking. It's about all of us connecting, because when we come to the other side, and these types of conversations are important, we're all going to need the support of each other to make this stuff move forward. Okay. I need to always call you out. Is there anything that you've seen? Sarah works a lot with political and women and Hispanic. Has that word come up, or postings, or anything that you've seen going on?
Hi. I'm so sorry I was late. I was lobbying someone. I think for me, in the political realm, it's often an old boys, let's be real, it's an old boys white club. And oftentimes we have to put up with a lot. We have to be careful about how we introduce diversity, and you don't want to shake the tree so bad that everything falls off and you're standing there with a bare tree and you don't get anywhere. I think for me, that's sometimes difficult. And I think for me, and this may not even be part of what the conversation has been, it's why I take my mental health so seriously, because I do have to be really, really good about reminding myself that I do matter and that the diverse opinions that I come matter. And there is sometimes is not the right time that we do, especially in my work, we do have to find the right time to bring things up in diversity. But I also do hope that, and we have this conversation a lot across politics and as lobbyists. I'll give you an example. I'm one of five Latina lobbyists in New York City. There's only 5 of us. And it's a problem. And so we've had this conversation about what are we doing to pull more people in, because then it makes it easier not to feel uncomfortable when we're bringing up diversity in, that group. And so, yeah, I mean, I face it a lot all the time. I welcome everybody's advice on how you've brought it up in situations like that, because I'm sure a lot of people know, like, I would love to just like shout from the mountaintops at every moment, but we all know that doesn't work. We deserve it as like a diverse community, but it's not. We also have to deal with what the hand we're dealt. So yeah, I think
that makes me concerned, because you want to use the word belonging, but does everyone want you to belong? Why? Some people are going, why are you there? People are still going now. Why are you there? Why are you there as a Latina? Why are you there as a woman? Why are you there as this? Why are you there as that? And so you can't always count on someone or a place to make you feel, you want to feel welcomed, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where the mental health stuff and reminding that your tribe around you is important. When my fellow Latina lobbyists are not getting somewhere with a particular office, we are literally on a text chain. We are on an email chain together, and we help each other get into spaces where we're not welcome, because one of us has a relationship there. And I think that's super important. And then it helps us all also make the space comfortable for whoever we're trying to approach, welcoming more of us in. And that's, growing my tribe and making sure to take care of my mental health and reminding myself that I am worth being in that room, whether or not I feel it all the time or not. It's super important because it's not going to change today. It's not going to change tomorrow, but it'll change sometime if we keep reminding ourselves and we keep showing up. But yeah, there are days when I don't want to show up. I'll be real.
So Sarah, right? Yes. Okay. Your name wasn't showing up for me. It just shows user. That's why. What you said really resonates with me a lot. And I'm sure it does with a lot of different people. For me, I'm in therapy for it to help with my mental health. But also creating support groups. For example, my brother-in-law, he created a group of Black male investors to give back and invest in other community members. So it's like being around like-minded people with a sense of purpose. I have a number of people. A Latina friend creates an accountability group. That's what she calls it. So having that support group really helps a lot. But I don't have the answers because I also struggle with it every day, and it gives my therapist money. So
I think all of us on this webinar, many others, are like minded in the sense of we want to make things better, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. That's why we do what we do. Because let's be honest, we could all go do something else and let everybody else figure it out. These are the things that keep us up at night, and why we do hold each other accountable, why we do check in with each other, and just be able to have these forums. I hope that you can just say, hey, let me connect after the fact. Let's continue these discussions. Let's add in new topics, because again, none of us are going to do this without each other. Whether it's everybody here or someone that's like-minded, you just can't walk and push through doors alone, because you can be in there by yourself. Lord knows I was the only little Black ballerina in class and on tour for most of my life. I've been the only one in countries. I never paid attention to it, but Lord knows if I saw someone else that was brown, tan, or something else, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And sometimes I think we forget to do that here when we see someone, whatever that is, that looks like us. Whether that is LGBT or disabilities, we must always turn around and say hi. You may not like them, that's okay. Same thing, another woman, another thing, say hello and try to see if you can work together from there or just be in the same room. I'm always amazed that when you walk into rooms and people that may look like you or look similar to you doesn't say anything to you. And I'm always like, hey, always good to see you. Always good. But that doesn't happen. I went to a breakfast not too long ago. It was the politician who was speaking was a Black man. I was in the back as a Black woman, and there was 3 other women in a room with 300 and something men for a breakfast at the Harvard Club. And when someone looked at me and I was like, wondering why I'm here, aren't you? And I just call it what it is. And he was like, well, a little bit. I'm like, isn't this shocking? I'm an activist for the Israel-US relationship. He was like, wait, what? I'm so confused. I was like, let me tell you about what I do. What do you do? And he was so thrown off that he started introducing me to everybody in the room. Because he was like, she belongs here. And I remember him saying, she belongs here. I was like, well, I'm glad you thought so. I already knew that, but happy that I justified it for you. Because you have to remember, sometimes you're justifying it for someone else. And you're not justifying it for yourself. Hey, Lewis, you've been over there quiet, nodding your head. I know you have something to say.
Yeah, definitely. Coming from education and the art field, previously a art teacher, but at a school that was very diverse. A lot of the students were first generation immigrants or immigrants themselves. I remember having one student who had only been in the country for a week, did not speak the language at all, but here I am as an art teacher. But as an art teacher, I'm seeing everyone. I'm seeing the entire school. So about 500 students I'm seeing. Some of them look like me, some of them don't. But definitely, I commented on this before, a sense of belonging for me definitely comes from if other people feel as though they belong as well. Like, yes, we're here, it's very diverse. In that setting, it has to be diverse because of the population, the neighborhood, the students, but that sense of belonging wasn't totally there. I remember one instance, the children were out on the playground, it's recess, right? And it's, recess is essentially like the break room, but for kids. They're being themselves, and the students were speaking their first language, which is not English. However, that made the other teachers uncomfortable because the children were speaking their first language, whatever that language is, Spanish, Farsi, Haitian Creole, whatever, but it made the teachers uncomfortable. And for me, English is my first language, but it's not making me uncomfortable. Like, be yourself. I definitely understand that. Be yourself. This is your break room. This is recess. However, it was not comfortable for the majority of the teachers who did not look like me, who were not, my generation, what have you. So they forced the students to stop speaking their first language, their native language, on the playground. And I remember speaking up about that. Like, how can you do this? Like, they're learning English in the classroom. They're doing exactly what you want them to do. They're taking these tests in English, even though some of them have only been here for a week, but they're taking these standardized tests in English, but yet you won't let them speak their first language on the playground because it makes you feel uncomfortable. So it's
insecurity of others that you have to make secure, and your differentness, whatever it may be.
yeah. And I just remember having to speak up for children so they could be themselves and feel like they belong. And I think that's definitely the difference. Yeah.
No, thank you, because I'm doing something another week where we can start having these conversations about how children are going to come out on the other side of this and how adults are coming out on the other side of this. And it's about empathy and it's about belonging. If you don't feel like you belong as a child, we all know as an adult, how are you supposed to make somebody else comfortable when you yourself have not maybe been in that place of being comfortable? And that again is not about gender or race. It's about being present in the space for which you are in. And that goes to religion. It goes across the board. And I know, Michael, I call you out. I know you're doing something. Now I changed it. I made a comment on it. Michael's my nephew, by the way. But I know that you're doing something with religion and belonging and all the other stuff that you do. And so what made you ping that?
I work a lot in spirituality, and I'm working and doing meditations for a particular group. And what really set me apart in that is I was doing a meditation on the trans community. You know, what does the spiritual growth has to do with this new growth for the trans community? And a lot of the people in the group attacked me because they were trans exclusive radical feminists. You know, in this group, I know it's new to me too. It's new to me too.
You can't settle for everyone.
And so, you know, this is a group that everybody preached radical inclusion. You know, nobody gets left behind. But then all of a sudden, because this didn't go with their program or didn't agree with their political philosophy or whatever, you know, they're like, well, that story can't be told here. And so that really got me in thinking of what do we mean by inclusion? And are we only meaning people who think like us, look like us, or are we inviting people to the table who may not have the same opinions or outlook as we do?
Thank you. Yeah, as I always say, thought. So, you know, so this is across the board now. I think everybody wants to belong to something. Let's just say that. Let's be real. Everyone wants to belong somewhere. But it comes down to, does a job decide how you belong? And then now that's a label and that's a task. Because I don't want to walk somewhere and that you make me feel that it's up to you to make me feel like I belong here. And what happens if you get someone great that does pull everyone in and then they leave? Now what? You only belonged while they were there? And so it's just a bigger conversation that I think we continually have to challenge ourselves to do for ourselves. And remember, when we walk into a room, how do we accept others into the room? You know?
Yeah. We do have 5 minutes left. So just want to let you know that.
Thank you. I know you have a hard out at 6. So again, if anyone has not connected on LinkedIn or put their information however they would like to connect, feel free to do that. Like I said, next week, I'm looking at, thanks to Tiffany, who still didn't turn her camera on, but that's okay. We were having a conversation this week on leadership. And so I changed it to kind of leadership, power, pause, and privilege. Because from the president down, there's a lot going on and there's just a lot of conversation. What was that, Ernie? Oh, can't talk to yourself on here, Ernie. You know, I'll call you out. But there's just a lot happening. And I think in order to have these conversations, when they're popping up in the news or things that we're all thinking about, but don't maybe have a forum, I invite everyone to continue to come back, invite friends, be open, speak. I'm sorry if I cut you off and my brain's going because I want to share something or someone shared something with me. But I thank you all very much. They are recorded. You can always get recordings back. Anything else?
Just shoot an email if you want a copy of the recording. I'll put the email in there now. And just if you want any previous recordings as well too, then let me know. I'm actually typing in the email address to send that request to.
And I also add you to an email list. If you don't want it, please just let me know. It's just a way that I send you the link for the next one. So that if you miss something, it's there, and it just says a thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Everyone stay safe. Enjoy. Good to see you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leslie.
Bye, guys.
See you next week.
See you next week.